guys, we've got a bit of a disaster. I was all set. We were going to head down to the river with the inflatable, and everything has just gone wrong. Before I thought I'd do it, I thought, you know what, take the motor out of the car, give it a run up in the barrel and just see. Just have a look and make sure everything's running fine. And as you would have it, it's not. It looks like now I'm not going out. And what a beautiful day it is. It's an absolutely stunning day. First time in the year, and this just lets you know, make sure all your toys are in working order before. Okay, so what problem we've got at the moment is when we run it up, when we get to this point, and I'll demonstrate, it starts missing at the high revs. I think that might be a spark plug, it might be old fuel, but it needs sorting out really before we get it on the boat and get it going. So the other thing to note that we've had is the P stream. This is very normally, right here, is normally very thick. It was when we first started it. I revved it up, it started missing, and then we get this weak stream. Yes, it's warm, it's obviously going through the power head. My worry is, because I haven't changed the impeller for over a year, my worry is that we've taken the tip off it and it might be just slightly lodged somewhere. Whether or not that is the case, I think before I put it on the boat, it's just best to strip down the leg and put a new one on. Runs up well, but I think it would benefit from an oil change, and also I think I'm going to do the oil change, impeller, and give it just a very good service. So here's a video on servicing the Tohatsu. So we're back again. The engine's been run up now for probably 5 to 10 minutes. It should be warm. I've been running it up just to get the oil warm. I think now's the time to do the oil change, but if we look at the keyhole here, it is just trickling out. It needs to be changed. So oil change, gearbox change, or gearbox oil change, and an impeller. Here we have the engine. It's just come off the stand. What we'll do now is we've got a drain plug that's situated just here. We'll take the top housing off, drain the oil out, and then just let it sit, I guess, and get all the old oil out. Better take the leg off so I can order a new impeller as well. I'm hoping, after it's been on the salt water, that it's going to come off, but I might just give it a squirt of WD beforehand. I've never serviced this outboard, and I've had it 2 years on the back of my boat. I'm not talking about the inflatable, I'm talking about the 17-foot moorbass, the fishing boat. Now, I've always used this as a insurance policy to get me out of trouble should I need it. Now when I go to use it, it doesn't work, it doesn't pump water. You know, this is a lesson learned. At the beginning of every season, make sure everything is serviced, because out on the water there is no second chances. When it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Slowly does it. This is the drain plug after all. We don't want to strip any threads. That turns one little disaster into a very big disaster. I'll be honest, I'm very confused. Where's the oil? Here's a new one. I'm showing that there is a small amount of oil on the dipstick at the lower end. I know I've run it up and it's warm, but I would have still thought there should be enough oil come out, but there's just absolutely nothing. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. So while I try and locate the oil, this is something for the comments below. I'm going to turn the camera off, and when we find some oil in it, we'll get back to you. Here we go, round two. You know what they say, assumptions are the mother of all mess ups. And this is a prime example. That's not the oil drain hole. So quick squeeze, open that up, and now I can show you where it is. That is the oil drain plug. That there is your oil drain plug. I feel very, very foolish. Looking around the garage now to see if there's a more appropriate container. Well, I don't know whether it's more appropriate, but a cereal bowl. Probably shouldn't tell the wife. We have oil. But that is some black oil. And considering this was meant to have had a full service before I got the motor, and I can tell you, I have hardly used this motor. It's just been on the back of, it's probably been used for 20 minutes. This is another lesson for me and everyone else. When you buy something from eBay and it says just had a service or one careful lady only, unless you've met that careful lady owner or you've seen it being serviced, don't trust what people say. Because 9 times out of 10 you've been told a little porky. Why would anyone go to the trouble of servicing something that they're not ever going to use? And how are you going to check? Words to live by. So, we have the O-ring, like the original. I know that because it's still got paint on it from where the outboard was first sprayed. Dipstick, that was me earlier, and now the drain plug. Just give them all a good wipe down. And put there. I'm going to put this rag, which was actually one of our hand towels before I decided to commandeer it. I'm going to just put that there and leave it probably for the next hour maybe, just to get all the little bits out. It does no harm. Then we'll put it all back together, either find some oil. We'll probably actually not put the oil in it just yet. We'll do the impeller, get all that sorted, and then put all the fluids in together. Put the drain plug back in the oil. Now what we're going to do is drop the leg off, assuming it comes off easily. That way we can access the impeller housing. Looking at it from here, we've got the two drain plugs this side. You can't really see, but I'll show you that when it's off. We've got here on this side here, just above the prop, we've got one bolt and then another one at the back. Now, I don't know whether you've seen before, but I've always put tape. You can see this here. This tape around. There is a rubber bung on these, just here. I tape mine in because they can fall out. We have to release that bolt in there. And what that does is that releases the shift linkage, allows it to split and come down. One thing I absolutely love about newer outboards is when they're put together with a really healthy amount of grease. That way, they know that outboards are used in salt water and the bolts never seize. And already I can feel the gear case separating. It's just a joy to work on these things sometimes. And again, a well-greased bolt. And here it is. And there, just here, is a water pump housing. Everything looks in good condition. Again, as I always do, just here, it's possible to see. We'll put grease to stop it seizing in the power head. Here, this is carbon deposits, but that's fine. But the main thing we need to do is get these bolts off the water pump housing. Actually, when doing things like this, can't stress enough how important it is to learn how to be your own home mechanic when it comes to outboards. When things go wrong on the water, you need to be able to strip these down and find out. I always carry a spare impeller when I'm on the water and enough tools to be able to do this. It only takes a few minutes. And here you can see the old impeller. As you can see, it's a bit deformed, but the important thing to note is all the tips are still there. That's good news because it means we don't have to go looking through the water pipes for bits of rubber. It's all complete. So we'll put a new impeller on that, put it all together and change the gearbox oil. So looking here now, we've got the gearbox just sat on this plank of wood. I've just got it with a G-clamp. Apologies for the light not being the best. However, what we're going to do is undo this drain plug here and also this one here and just drain all the gearbox oil into this drain pan. Once that's done, we'll refill it and get going. I don't know whether you can see very easily the colour of this oil coming down. There you can. It's certainly not emulsified. It's just very good. Not blackened at all. There you can see it just running all the way down. And that's how we're going to leave it now. Leave it for half an hour, and we're just going to let that completely drain out. And here you can see the old impeller. As you can see, it's a bit deformed, but the important thing to note is all the tips are still there. That's good news because it means we don't have to go looking through the water pipes for bits of rubber. It's all complete. So we'll put a new impeller on that, put it all together and change the gearbox oil. It's quite hard to see here, but we're looking at the old impeller just here and the new impeller just here, very small. So the main difference, as you can see, is the new impeller has all the fins dead straight and the old impeller is just slightly deformed. What we're going to do now is put the new impeller back onto the drive shaft, reassemble the water pump housing. The oil, as you saw a moment ago, has already been put in the leg. What I've done is actually touched up a few of the scuffs on the leg where it's hit the ground or anything like that, just to make it a bit smarter while I've got it apart. So, time to get it all assembled. So at this point it's really important to note we're putting the impeller, the water pump, back onto the drive shaft, just here. When we do that, we have to remember, I don't know whether this is actually going to come out, but this here that I'm holding, that's the Woodruff key. That's really important. If we don't install that at the same time, the impeller isn't going to spin on the drive shaft. It's just going to stay stationary while the drive shaft spins around. What I like to do is put it on first, put it on the drive shaft first, and I use a tiny bit of grease just to blob it on there. I then will make sure it's in position with a pair of just forceps. That just helps me get it all into position. And here it is, as you can see, stuck on with a bit of grease, and that way when we slide the impeller over, it will spin with the drive shaft. The impeller's here, it rotates with the drive shaft. Now everything goes clockwise. Put a little bit of grease on the inside of the water pump housing and on the tips of the fins. That way when we turn it, we're not going to damage the water impeller. So now the water pump housing is on. As you lower it down the drive shaft, it's important to turn the drive shaft in the rotation of the engine, normally clockwise, it certainly is with this, and that way the impeller fins will nicely mould into it. That's on. We need to just bolt it up now and then offer it up to the engine. Water pump is on the leg. Everything's tightened up as it should. I've had a good look over it. I've put grease on the end of the drive shaft. I've greased the end of the rubber that goes into the water pickup. Now we just need to attach it. It's important when we do attach it to get the shift linkage attached to the other half of the shift linkage in the leg. That's the leg closed up. What we have to do now is remember this should be in neutral. However, there's no guarantee that it will be. That's because when I've been pushing up and down, shift linkage may have actually been knocked into gear, either forward or reverse. And now what I have to do is, just by pulling it over, work out which way it is, adjust the mechanism, and that way tighten it up. Then we're all done. So just by trying to turn this, I can tell that it's in gear already. I don't want to force it. I'll pull it from the top and see whether it's in forward or reverse, dependent on which way the prop moves. That way then I can just move the selector into the appropriate gear and tighten it up. It's a bit hard to see and do it all at the same time, but as I pull, I can see that it's in forward gear. It's trying to go forward. The prop is rotating clockwise. The best way to tackle this, rather than trying to undo anything or pull the shift linkage up, the best way to tackle it is to move the selector into forward gear, like that. It's loose in the hole, as we mentioned. Now I can just tighten it up. Of course, the downside by doing that is that I can't get to the nut while it is in forward gear on the motor. So, back into neutral. And what I'll have to do now is try and push down on the link rod. we've got it all set up. We've got the shift rod into the right position. It all seems to be fine. I thought I'd share a couple of tips and tricks, basically from what I've learnt working on this. If we look down here in the hole, it's quite hard to see, but if we move the shift rod into gear and out of gear, you can only do it really in neutral or reverse. The shift rod is very hard and very slippy to move by putting a pair of pliers into the hole and getting it down. Kindly, if you look here, this is the end of the shift rod, so it's very easy to push down on this. The other thing to note, this bung stops it from rattling, so when you're bringing the leg up and mating it to the gearbox, take this bung out first, and that way you'll be able to get it up through the hole easier. Thankfully now the outboard seems to be all together. It moves into reverse, neutral and forwards absolutely brilliantly. The only thing we've got left to do now is to fill it up with 450 milliliters of oil. I'm using 1040 fully synthetic oil. That's what's recommended. A good quality motor oil. That's what the manual says, so that's what I'll use. And then tomorrow we'll run it up, make sure everything works, and that is it. Fully serviced, ready for the season ahead. And there we have 450 milliliters of Castrol Magnatec. Now that it's full of oil, we'll give it a few pulls, make sure all the oil is flowing around all the different bits of the engine, then check the level. It is at this point important to note, take the kill cord off the engine before you pull it. That way it won't inadvertently start up out of the water. It's alright just pulling it gently over. The water pump will still spin in its housing, but if you remember, we put the grease on the tips for exactly this purpose. We'll give it a few moments for everything to settle and then check the level. That's enough oil in it. Time to put the cover on, and that's everything done.